Douglas Murray writes in his column this week that a monarchy is good for politics. In America, he says, they're lumbered with political dynasties after all, like the Clintons or the Bushes, while in Britain a hereditary monarchy gets that out of our collective system. To explain, Douglas joins me now. Douglas Murray, welcome to Spectator TV. Now, to start with, we in the UK are going through 10 days of mourning, but it doesn't seem like it's something that is being well received across the world. Well, actually, it has been well received across much of the world, except in America by certain parts of the American commentariat. Can you tell us about what that's been like?
Yes, the American public and American officials have been enormously sympathetic and expressed their deep sadness and their feelings of kinship with the British people as we go through this period of national mourning. So that on one level, it's dignified, respectful, and an expression of friendship as well as sorrow. But there have been sections of the American media, the American press in particular, who just seem not, and bits of American academia, who seem not to be able to keep their mouths closed for even a day, let alone 10, to show respect for an ally. Within hours of Her Majesty's death, the New York Times ran a hit piece about her, accusing her of being connected to the crimes of colonialism, which showed not only an unbelievable historical ignorance, but a constitutional ignorance of the way in which the United Kingdom is set up that was quite staggering. And then in the days and hours that followed, that just got worse. More and more people jumped onto that bandwagon. The New York Times even hauled in British writers, radical left anti-monarchists, to attack Britain and attack the Queen. The American broadcast media like CNN and MSNBC decided that the period immediately after the monarch's death was the perfect moment to start talking about slavery again, as if the American media doesn't talk about slavery all the time, and as if Queen Elizabeth II had any connection to it. So there was this sort of, it wasn't just ignorance, there was malevolence in the air. And you can see that as being to do with Her late Majesty, which I don't think it does, or you can see it as having to do with just the extraordinary monomaniacal and really malevolent way in which everything is now looked at in America, always through these same lenses, as I said in my most recent book, always through these same lenses of racism, colonialism, slavery, as if we've never talked about them ever before, and this is the ideal time to do so.
And you write in your column that people have a problem with this unearned privilege. But as you point out, that's particularly ironic when it comes from the American quarters, because tell us about that.
Well, yes, I mean, the point to do with the malevolence of the media is a specific problem of modern America, and that's come from people who just hate Britain, basically, are very racist against the British, are very malevolent about our history, and just guided by a horrible animus against us. But there is another type of criticism that has come up in the last week, which is from a more friendly quarter, as it were, from people who feel kinship with Britain. And I've heard this a couple of times, and I've sort of thrown my own tuppence into this debate a bit in America in recent days, which is that a number of people have said to me, well, there's a problem with the monarchy, which is that it seems to be the epitome of unearned privilege. And I've rather enjoyed countering this point, actually, in recent days, because I keep saying to people, well, first of all, that suggests that unearned privilege is something which is unheard of in America, which is a hard position to hold. And secondly, it actually misses something very important. And as I say in my column in Spectator this week, one of the remarkable things of the constitutional monarchy is that the inevitable national obsession with dynasties is focused on one dynasty, and that one that's lasted, of course, more than 1,000 years, the institution of the monarchy. And to a great extent, this is a political interest, but it's also to do with an inevitable human biological interest, which is our interest in watching genes play out, our interest in watching generation after generation of a family. Where are the black sheep? Where are the bad eggs? Who are the people who really are the inheritors of great figures of the past, and much more? Who's got her side of the family more, who's got his side of the family more? These are sort of interesting conversations we all have in our lives about friends and friends' children and so on. But nationally, that obsession focuses solely on the institution of monarchy. And we don't have, as a result, political dynasties or dynasties, as Americans would put it. We don't have that. We have a little bit of it on the political left, interestingly enough. The Benn family. You might say Harriet Harman of the Pakenhams. You might say a little bit of Milibandry, and of course, rather remarkably, a little bit of hereditary Kinnockism, which is a quite amazing and unforeseeable hereditary line in politics.
That one is international, that power family.
That one's gone international, exactly. Who would have predicted that 30 years ago? But, we don't have political dynasties. Nobody's obsessed in Britain with whether or not John Major's children are going to come back and save us, or whether the Blairs are going to run for office again. Whereas in America, politics is very dominated by a few dynasties. People are obsessed with it. And you don't have, you can go back to the founding and the 19th century in America. You could be Adams dynasty in American politics. That you can look at the Roosevelts, for instance, coming more up to date, the Kennedys, even more up to date. Look at the way in which over the last 25 years, it's looked at times as if the presidency is simply going to rotate between the Clinton family and the Bush family. Look at the way in which people wonder whether Michelle Obama is going to run for office. Is Chelsea Clinton going to run at some point? Are the Bushes going to offer us up a new generation of talent? And even the disruptors in American politics, Donald Trump, is Don Jr. going to run? Think of this in British terms, and it seems absurd. Are the Johnson children being lined up for political office? I would think not. So as I say in the piece, one of the many, many things that constitutional monarchy does that is so good is it actually detoxifies the political arena from having hereditary politics, hereditary electoral politics. And, as well as providing us with constitutional order and much, much more, I think this is a little noted but important role that the monarchy provides.
It does seem like such an extraordinary and strong pattern in American politics. Now, you've already mentioned this human desire, obsession with seeing how genes play out. But do you think there's something else here that means that America is so prone to these dynasties? What's going on? This is no longer a coincidence.
Yes, that's right. Well, there are some explanations. You could say that, for instance, running for the top job in America means you've got to be able to bundle a lot of money. You've got to have a lot of connections nationally across all the states and much more. And I suppose you could argue that that what we're really talking about, and this is what one American commentator said to me the other day, is maybe we're talking about celebrity, really. In order to run for office in America, you need to be famous. Dr. Oz is a good example at the moment. If you're big on television, with Donald Trump, you can become big in politics. Now, that there is something in that, but that doesn't explain the dynasties, other than that they are well placed to bundle money and so on. But I think there is something else. I think there is a sense that, and this is a very anti-meritocratic sense, but I think there has been a sense certainly that some people know how to rule. Now, again, in Britain, we get that out of the way with the House of Windsor. In America, you just have this sort of, this sense always that there are some people who know how to do it. And how would X know how to do it? They've never been near office. Whereas if people have been near office, somehow they might be preternaturally knowledgeable about how to run the country. I do think it's an odd temptation. It's an odd inclination. It's very anti-meritocratic. It's certainly anti-American, and yet it's wholly American. So yes, I've been pointing out to people this week that if they don't understand what Britain is going through at the moment and don't understand the depths of feeling, that might not be the fault of the monarchy or the fault of the British public. It might be their fault, and they should look at it more.
Well, just very finally, Douglas, how has that gone down when you say that on American media?
You know, a mixed bag. I haven't yet had an encounter, as my friend Andrew Roberts has, with an entirely hostile interviewer, such as he had on CNN the other day, when the interviewer just seemed to want to rip into Britain's history and legacy, and it was left to Andrew to have to be shouted over by the presenter as Andrew was trying to present facts, and the presenter started saying, you know, this is not a propaganda channel. Quite hard to hear a CNN presenter saying that, actually, with a straight face. And Andrew Roberts, of course, had to point out that if the Americans were going to start attacking Her late Majesty for the crimes of slavery, they should remember that it was her very distant ancestor, George III, who signed the Anti-Slavery Act in 1807, many decades before America had a civil war and had to kill 600,000 of their own citizens in order to do away with the vile trade. Britain did away with it peacefully and then policed the high seas for decades at enormous national costs. So I'm afraid, as I say, sorry to return to where I started, what we see in some of the American, as I say, response to the death of the Queen has been just an alarming historical ignorance, but driven by an alarming present day animus. And I think that we've seen who our friends are in America across the aisle, but we've also seen, particularly in American media, who some really vitriolic enemies of Britain are.
Well, Douglas, you are always welcome on Spectator TV. Thank you so much.